Hi, thanks for joining us today for this Idea Lab. My name is Liz Gavadis, and I am excited to host this Libraries for Digital Equity training, micro training. So today we're talking about balancing tech in summer reading. Let's start real quick with what's already happening. So we've got a few things already happening in a lot of libraries. This is probably happening in your library. First off, we have tech added to reading challenge trackers. That's when we have a baseline reading tracker, say it's a sheet of paper where you're coloring in circles. And then on top of that, there's an option maybe for a Google form or to take a picture of something to submit it. An alternative to that would be tech first reading challenge trackers. And so I would call those things like Beanstack or engaged readers. These are platforms where the vendor is selling you something and they're saying this is going to manage your summer reading program. And maybe there's a paper element to it or a non-digital element to it, but the digital part, the tech part comes first. So I would call the difference between these two whether tech is the baseline or whether tech is the add-on. Beyond that, I think another big trend we're seeing as far as how technology is brought into library summer programs, and this is more so maybe for teens and definitely for adults, and that is as non-reading programming that are still cumulative challenges. And so what I'm talking about is something where you've got programming that goes over a period of time, it builds up, and you've got this sense of reward or completion at the end. And so that might look like, for example, a coding camp, or it could be something like a robotics competition, maybe one of those like robot battles, those are fun. Or it could be a video contest. I know I worked on a book production contest once for a teen summer program. And one more thing that we're seeing, and you're probably seeing this again in your library, is tech as rewards or as prizes for anyone who's going through this summer program. And so that might mean subscriptions. It might mean things like Roblox bucks, I think they're called, or it could be actual devices. The top reader in every age group gets an iPad or something. That's really going to depend on your budget, what you can actually do, and it's going to depend on your partnerships. If you've got, a Best Buy that wants to be the sponsor for your summer reading, you might have a lot more options for using tech as a reward in your programming. So that's what's going on now. Let's talk about roadblocks and concerns that might impact how you bring in tech into your programs. So it's easy to get really excited about all the ways that we can bring tech into these things. And I will say, I'm introducing these things not because I have a perfect solution, but because, I want to put it out there for our discussion. That's really the benefit of an Idea Lab, is that we can share and talk to each other. So we get really excited about this tech, we push it out there, and then we forget that maybe it's not actually accessible for everyone. Maybe some of our patrons, don't have home internet, or they don't have devices, or they don't have the skills to use it, or maybe they need adaptive technology and assistive technology in order to interact with a digital platform or with, a physical platform like a tracking sheet. This is especially a concern accessibility specifically is a concern if you have kind of a homebrewed platform. If you've come up with something in-house for how you're going to track your reading, that might be less accessible just because you haven't had the time to, you and your team that developed it haven't had the time to go through, really extensive testing with users that are using all kinds of, things like screen readers and with limited mobility. Running those kinds of tests is going to help you understand what the access really looks like on that platform. So, this is something to be aware of. It shouldn't stop you from doing something new yourself, but just something to consider. I think this is a line that, I know I've heard it from parents and from teachers and other community members. I know I also have heard it from library staff who are saying, well, why are we doing this? I do think it's important to have an answer. Digital literacy, tech literacy is absolutely a core literacy and a core life skill for the modern age. And that's our responsibility as libraries, to connect people with information. And that means, digital skills, digital literacies. But just answering that question isn't always going to solve it, especially because these comments are, kind of thrown out offhand. So I do want to just air that as something that might come up and something that might provide a little bit of resistance against really incorporating tech into our programs. The last thing is competition for attention. So I won't lie, scrolling through social media is going to be often more fun than whatever we're offering, or sitting and watching Netflix is going to be easier than whatever we're offering. That's, we can't really get around that. In fact, there's this quote that I really like. It's all the way back from 1968. It's by George Orwell, but I think you'll see, it's pretty relevant to what we're seeing, even if it's maybe a little bit flawed. If our book consumption remains as low as it has been, at least let us admit that it is because reading is a less exciting pastime than going to the dogs, the pictures, or the pub, and not because books, whether bought or borrowed, are too expensive. I mean, again, sometimes it is because they're too expensive. Sometimes it is because our tech isn't accessible. But, a lot of the time it's just because it's not as exciting as going to the dogs, the pictures, or the pub. Okay. So those are kind of, baseline things that we should be thinking about. I do want to throw out some quick ideas, and then we can get into our discussion, which, is more fun. First off, I really like to think of the library's collection, the library's tech, the library's, electronic resources, and also computers in the building or library laptops that you check out. I like to think of all of that as just more of the library's collection, because if we think about it as a collection, we can treat it like a collection. And so this is an opportunity to challenge our patrons to think about it that same way, or to invite them to think about it the same way. So if we are saying you get a sticker for checking out a nonfiction book and you get a sticker for checking out a fiction book, then, I would suggest also give them a sticker for using a library computer, or for, learning how to print something. There's ways to encourage them to access the technology collections in the same way that they're accessing our other collections. So there are some trackers, some tools that we can use that might be really fun and rewarding for patrons. One thing is like Kindle, will track your pages read. It'll report it automatically on Goodreads. Goodreads does that tracking. A lot of apps will do this kind of tracking, and some people really like to tie those things together. And so this could be a fun way to incorporate it into your summer reading, and to say, hey, live leaderboards updated on our website for adults or something. It can be a lot of fun. The one concern is a lot of people aren't going to want to tie these accounts together. And some people who might be fine with tying their accounts together might not think about the implications. If your Facebook account is tied to your Goodreads account, tied to Kindle, tied to Libby, tied to your library barcode, what does that mean? Who from Facebook now has access all the way to, if you just check something out and it's showing up on the library's leaderboard. Now, I know that's not really how libraries operate, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to invite our patrons to consider, who am I sharing my information with? Because that privacy literacy is a big part of what we're trying to do here too. And finally, I really like the idea of celebrating tech mentorship. The fact that everyone has something unique to teach, to bring. Everyone has some, many people have some way that they're interacting with technology on a daily basis that is, old hat to them, but it might be new and exciting to someone else. And so pairing people up into a situation where they're able to show someone else, oh, hey, here's a trick that I happen to know. Here's, oh, that problem you're having is something that I do every day. So here's an easier way to do it. And then it invites the person who is now in a teacher role to think of themselves as a teacher, as an instructor, and as a leader. They can think of themselves as, oh, yeah, I do know stuff about, tech. I am knowledgeable. I can learn more. And that helps them be more excited to take on challenging situations, to learn something new, not to kind of block things out when tech gets hard. And that mindset is really, really critical for, what we're trying to do here in libraries. So maybe that looks like giving, credit towards this. If you have an activity challenge, giving credit towards working as a tech mentor. I helped someone with their computer, I get a sticker. Or maybe it means hosting an event, inviting seniors and inviting teens and saying, okay, let's just randomly pair up. You have an iPhone, you have an iPhone, talk, get together, see what kinds of problems you're having. I think it's a fun way to, again, to ask people to see themselves as leaders, to see themselves as teachers, and then to be willing to take on challenges in the future. So those are some quick ideas I wanted to share. My, point here is that there's great opportunity for us to be proactive and to really be intentional about how we are using tech. If we think hard about this, if we make conscious decisions about what we're doing, I think we can build programs that are really accessible and that are really supportive to our patrons. And that puts us in a much, much better place than just having to respond to the patron saying, but don't you have it digitally? But don't you have a way for me to track this with my phone? It's all about being able to think about it beforehand when you're not on the spot and then say, yes, we do, or no, we don't. And here's why, here's the alternative. And that puts us in a good position, I think. So that is it for our micro training. Now we are going to get into our discussion. So I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to invite you to go ahead and come off of mute and let's start chatting.